Hello, welcome into WLOY, Loyola Radio, streaming online at WLOY.org and Campus TV channel 111.1. You're listening to After the Whistle, Loyola's premier sports talk radio show, airing every Monday from 3 to 4 p.m. and every Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. Welcome into another Monday edition of the show. I am your host today, Jeffrey Bazzi, alongside my co-host, Jimmy Cody. Jimmy, how is your Monday going so far? Obviously, we had the Super Bowl last night, so yeah, how was it otherwise?
Well, I enjoyed the Super Bowl, that's for sure. The one thing I will say though is that I'm disappointed football season's over because I love football season. Football is by far my favorite sport to watch, and I don't know, it just I feel like carries me through life, right? It's like one of my favorite things. So now we're in the season of no football, but it's about a month until March Madness, so we'll enjoy some college basketball action. We got lacrosse obviously heating up here. We had a huge win this weekend, so that was awesome. But yeah, I don't know. We just move into the next part of the sports calendar, but it's always sad when football leaves us because I don't know about you, Jeffrey, but I think far and away football is the best sport.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the most entertaining, at least here in America. I mean, football is definitely the most popular sport. And yeah, it's sad to see it go because, like you said, we're not going to have it for a long time. And it's weird just because we had it last night and now we're not going to have it again until August and then September for the real games to start. So yeah, there's going to be a long gap and we'll all have to wait it out. But I will say, though, I mean, the way that season ended last night, that was a hell of a game. So yes, the Kansas City Chiefs, they took on the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Kansas City Chiefs ended up winning 38-35 in an absolute shootout, an absolute great game.
Yeah,
I
it was a great game.
thought it was great back and forth throughout the whole game. And I don't know where to start, Jimmy. There's a lot we'll get into. I guess I'll give you the floor first if you want. I mean, what
No,
did you
Jeff,
do you want me
this
to
is your team.
you want me to
I
go?
want to hear from you. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Because I have a feeling we have a lot of the same thoughts here. So hit us. Obviously, it's a tough day because let's put it this way: it sucks to lose a Super Bowl. Like, obviously, I've lost one way worse. But at the same time, it was nowhere close. So at least this one, you guys were up. You did something that only you and the Atlanta Falcons have accomplished. It was a 26-1 entering last night's game, now 26-2 record. And I think that's when I'm not sure the specifics of it, but you guys blew the lead in the Super Bowl. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just start with that. The Eagles were up 24-14 at the half. And I thought the Eagles, not just in the first half, but most of the night, I thought they were more in control than the Chiefs. I just thought they looked better. It's just, I think the problem was the Eagles in the big moments, they did not have any really big moments that went on their side. I think the biggest moment they probably had was the AJ Brown long touchdown,
Yes.
which I think was 45 yards. I could be wrong though. But you look at the Jalen Hurts fumble, which was returned for a touchdown. I mean, that's a huge moment early on in the game, and the Chiefs were able to steal 7 points off of that. Trying to think here. Obviously, the Kadarius Toney punt return. I know he didn't score, but the fact that he took it all the way down to inside the 5, I believe,
Two plays
those were
momentum
huge.
switching. Absolutely, Jeff. I couldn't agree with you more. And that is the one thing that I keep saying. Those two plays, I honestly think determine that game. Just because if the Eagles offense, after they had already scored, can go down and score again and really put them, because did that tie the game? That touchdown ended up tying the game. That can't
Off of the Toney punt return?
go off of the turnover in the beginning. You guys had a chance to
Oh,
extend it.
off of the turnover.
Yeah,
Yes.
you had a chance to make it a 2 possession lead.
Yes, I think that did tie the game at 14.
Yes. So had you pulled away there, that was one play that you really wish you could have had back, but just because it easily contributed to 7 points. And then the Toney thing was just awful special teams, which the Eagles really haven't had a problem all year. But I will say this: they actually switched punters right before the game.
So they did.
Yeah,
They went back to Aaron Sipos, who has been the starter all year before he was injured. And then Brett Kern came in for a few games.
Mhm.
And they went back to Sipos. And yeah, I thought Sipos had a chance to maybe make a play. And I'm not sure if he was just blocked or he kind of just gave up. I don't know.
Yeah, just the whole play kind of looked at a sink. There was nobody on that side of the field, and the ones that were there just got blocked because there's so many more Chiefs guys. It was just almost like the Chiefs picked the return to that side, and there was space, and it was just worked out. I
Yeah,
don't even think it was anything special. I think it was just a meltdown on the Eagles' part.
right. And the fact that Tony, he actually switched sides of the field. He was going to the left, I believe, and then he just reversed it to the right, and he ended up weaving through the Eagles defense and got all the way down to the 5. And then Kansas City from there, I believe, tied the game there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Tony scored that touchdown. Tony did have a touchdown. I think that was the go-ahead touchdown that he had. But yeah, back to the other big play, the Hurts fumble in the first or second quarter. I'm trying to remember here. I think it was the second quarter. Yes, it was the second quarter. Hurts was trying to get out of pressure. I think he was trying to move to the right, and I think he was trying to switch hands with the ball.
Yeah.
And he doesn't make many mistakes like that, but that was a costly mistake.
No, that play was huge because it just allowed the Chiefs to just re-enter the game. And I say this all the time. The Chiefs offense is good enough as is. You don't need to turn the ball over and make it even more difficult on yourself. You don't need dumb special teams plays, which make it more difficult for yourself. And also, too, it also felt like whenever the Eagles could get going on offense in the second half, they would shoot themselves in the foot with either a penalty or, a bad play or, just a play that didn't work out. Like, I felt like a lot of times Jalen Hurts, when they would run those RPOs, he'd keep the ball and he had no choice but to just kind of take it and lose yards because they don't want to throw the ball because they have the linemen down the field and you want to create more penalties, but there's no place for him to go. So he has no choice but to lose yards.
Right. And it's funny because I thought the script was a little flipped in the first half because both teams on their opening drive scored touchdowns. You're thinking, oh, this could be a shootout. And it ended up being a shootout, but Kansas City really didn't do much besides that first touchdown drive. They were kind of pedestrian offensively.
In the first half?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
because their other 7 points are off of a defensive touchdown.
Absolutely. Their offense.
And it felt like, I don't know, it was Travis Kelce or bust on every single play. I felt like the other guys didn't do anything until the second half.
I agree with that. Their offense was focused around, I felt like a couple guys specifically. One, Kelce, absolutely. There's no doubt that it revolves around him. We know that.
You saw in that first drive, too.
The second guy, though, was Pacheco. Pacheco was really effective running the ball. And then the third, their offensive line. Their offensive line, I thought, did a really good job.
It was phenomenal.
Eagles D-line. There were some holding penalties here and there. But for the most part, I thought the refs let them play. For most of the night, there was really not that many penalties. And those are two really good offensive lines and defensive lines. So it was kind of nice that I thought they let them play. But at the same time, too, I mean, if you're talking about letting them play, you got to talk about that last penalty that was called because that same thing happened 20 times throughout the night on both sides. And I'm sorry to say this, but it just feels like the Chiefs get every stinking call. And it is so annoying. I've seen it happen to my own team. I've seen it happen to the Bengals. I've seen it happen to the Eagles now. And it is so frustrating because the Chiefs literally get every single call. It literally reminds me of the Patriots from like the early 2000s. Yes, you can say that it's a penalty, and that's fine. Like by the rule of the book. Yeah, he grabbed his jersey. But at the same time, literally RG3 from ESPN was saying the same thing. It happened almost every single play on both sides of the ball. There's plenty of times where Chiefs defenders are doing the same thing. It was never called.
Yeah.
Just saying.
That's just a really tough one.
It's the timing of it that sucked because I thought it ruined a great game.
Right. And people can argue, oh, he actually didn't hold him. And then the video shows that he might have grabbed him once or twice. And Bradbury, even himself, James Bradbury is the one who committed the penalty.
I don't know if Juju's ever getting to that ball. That's the unfortunate part.
That's another argument.
I don't know if he is. So it's just like, let him go. But also at the same time, it's the last play of your season. So you're not going to do that. And he also was just in a bad position because he wasn't really able to see the quarterback and the receiver.
Right.
He wasn't in a spot where he could turn his head, so he had no choice but to just grab onto him. And I don't know. It's just a really bad way to end the season.
Yeah, and the thing is, I actually thought the officiating most of the night was actually pretty good. I don't know about you. I thought it was actually pretty solid. I don't think there was any terrible calls. I think that was just the one controversial call.
No,
there were many that really
I'll tell you
bugged
the
me.
One part that was a disaster. And that was when they had that penalty. They ran that play because it was near the sideline, the Chiefs. Or the Eagles were on offense. They ran that play near the sideline, and you're supposed to be allowed to substitute, but it was a play that was like close. And by the refs just being so unorganized, not getting to their spot to block the Eagles from running the play, and not letting the substitution take place because obviously the Eagles want to run the play because it's near the sideline. That's their hurry up offense. They're just going with their theme. But the refs were so unprepared and so slow that the play ended up not counting and they blew it dead in the middle because they aren't in the middle. They're not in the spot that they're supposed to be. I mean, Roger Goodell said this week the officiating in the NFL has never been better. That is a complete joke because last night I thought there were so many times where people were out of position or I don't know. That was the one play that I just shook my head and was like, these guys are idiots. And I feel like we say that every single week.
Yeah, but back to the holding call. I mean, that is a tough way to have the season end, whether you're an Eagles fan or not. I guess as a neutral, it's sad to see the clock just wind down. You know they're going to kick a chip shot field goal. It's going to go in. So, yeah, it's a tough way to end the season for the Eagles. For the Chiefs, I mean, now they've won 2 out of 4.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't want to say
Mahomes
it's
has his
you think there's some chatter about a dynasty?
Yeah, it's a dynasty. They've been to the AFC Championship every single year, so it's a dynasty. It's starting to be that. And once you get the second Super Bowl in that short of span, I think you're absolutely are considered a dynasty. However, I will say this: I don't think it's going away anytime soon because Patrick Mahomes is only 27 years old.
Yeah,
That's the worst
and the fact that they came into the year with kind of a
Question marks.
not unproven receiving core, but I don't know,
Question marks.
an underwhelming receiving core, and they found a way to get Juju and Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Kadarius Toney going.
Well, I think Tony's going to be a star for them in the future. I think he's going to probably take a big step forward.
I thought Juju was phenomenal last night,
Yeah,
especially later on.
I mean, he did a better job later in the game, but I didn't think that he did anything that really stuck out to me. The guy that, like I said, I was really most impressed with was actually Pacheco. I thought he ran the ball really effective, just because I expected more out of the Eagles defense. Just the front, like the way I listen. I said on this show that I thought the Eagles defense was like a similar tier to the Cowboys defense, and I know that we've had some callers who did not like that, but at the same time, they got torched by an elite quarterback. The last time that they really played a good quarterback was Dak. And that's even questionable because he's nowhere near the level of Mahomes. But this is now 2 times in a row you've gotten torched by these, big time quarterbacks. And it's fair to ask Jonathan Gannon, like when it comes up to these big quarterbacks, is he really that prepared? Because I thought the defense looked awful last night. That was the worst I ever saw them look. In the second half, they may as well have been like the Lions defense where they had no chance of stopping them. It was all on the offense,
In Kansas City, during every single possession of the second half, they scored on every single possession.
Yes.
Whether it's 3 or 7. Yeah. We were talking about this off the air right before the show a little while ago. When they came out for that opening drive in the third quarter, the Chiefs, they came down so fast.
Yeah,
scored.
In the middle of that drive, I sent a text to Eddie Stankowick, who always calls into our show, and I said, this feels like quicksand. And Jeff, that was the beginning of the quicksand.
And they did the same thing in the first quarter. I mean, as soon as the Eagles scored their opening drive touchdown, they came down on their opening drive and they came right down and scored as well.
Yeah. And it's proof that you can't give them extra chances because the offense is just already so good. Just hammers home that point of how, that Hurts turnover was really a killer. I thought that was such a momentum stopper for the Eagles. I really did. I thought that play, if you can argue if that play doesn't happen, the Eagles might win the game.
That's possible. The other thing too, you brought up, I think the defensive front, they didn't really get pressure on Mahomes too much. And coming into the game, the talk was, how's his ankle going to feel? And his ankle was okay early on, but then you saw him go down on that one play. I think it was the third down play in the second quarter where he was clearly in pain, limping off the field. And I guess lucky for him, they ended up punting, so they kind of bought a little bit of time for him to rest. And then they went to the half, so that's another half an hour with the halftime show there that he got to
he had like 35
rest
40
and
minutes
take whatever medication that they probably gave him. So he came out in the third and he was firing away.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember that one run. I think it might have been the fourth. He just came out over the middle, and I think he ran down maybe the 15-yard line.
Yeah, nobody could get him. There was this open space, and that's what he does that just kills you. He is so hard to tackle. He just cannot be brought down. You think you have him, and he gets rid of the ball. Even on the incomplete passes, you think you have a sack on him, and then he throws it away for an incompletion. And he's just so good at that. And honestly, it doesn't, like, he's injured, right? That's the thought process, but it still didn't even matter.
Yeah, and we talk about how the Eagles front didn't really get pressure on Mahomes. The Chiefs front got a little bit of pressure on Hurts. I think more pressure was put on Hurts than Mahomes, but Hurts played really well. Hurts was unbelievable.
Hurts played phenomenally, I thought. Honestly, besides that one play, the fumble, I thought he played really good. First of all, he had 3 rushing touchdowns. He had the 2-point conversion. Without him, they obviously never are competitive in that game just because he made so many plays, even on those third downs. Some of the throws he made to Goddard, to Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, I mean, they were beautiful. I mean, Hurts really did play a really, really nice game. 27 for 38, so great with the accuracy. He has 3 touchdowns on the ground, and he throws for over 300.
Yeah. I mean, that's
He was
more than
way,
enough
he was
to
way
win.
better than Patrick Mahomes was. Patrick Mahomes had 182 yards. That's it. That wasn't even 10 yards a pass for Mahomes.
Yeah, and additionally, Hurts had 70 on the ground. You mentioned the 3 touchdowns on the ground. It's just too bad because we were talking about this just before we came on. The Eagles had no help from the 3 running backs. Where were they last night? They
Yes.
were
Yeah. So let's talk about the Eagles offense and specifically when it comes to running the ball. Now we know that they have the best offensive line in the NFL. One of them. And I'm gonna say the best. They also have a quarterback who is amazing at when he is the one running the ball. Like when he is a ball carrier, he's a threat to score a touchdown anytime the ball is in his hands. So you combine that with a pretty good group of running backs. Miles Sanders, I know, was a little banged up last night, went into the locker room at one point. But I thought Gainwell, 4 yards a carry, was doing a decent enough job. Boston Scott really doesn't have an effect besides whenever it's a Giants game. So for the sake of this argument, I mean, he just didn't really do that much, and he's just not one of the top 2. But you just didn't get the effect out of either of them. And I thought it was because they didn't really get the ball that much.
Well, I was surprised. It was either the second or third rushing play of the game, and Boston Scott was the one getting the ball, not Sanders or Gainwell. I was just surprised. And I feel like they weren't really committed to running the ball too much, even from the start. I'm talking about the Eagles and Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator.
Well, they only had 17 carries among running backs.
And the thing was, they were winning in the first half. I mean, they didn't trail at all in the first half. And even in the second half, they weren't really trailing for that much. I mean, they were only trailing, I think, for when they were down 35-27. And then at the end, obviously, when they were trailing 38-35.
So the part that really disappoints me the most with Steichen is because I thought he really had done a really good job of calling plays, predominantly with the way that they run the ball. But I just can't get this through my head. And I'm going to talk out this situation to you. Maybe you can find some sense here. Jalen Hurts was their most successful runner yesterday. But by adding the running backs into the game, that would only create more options for Jalen Hurts to run or throw or do something dynamic.
And that's what makes the Eagles offense so hard to defend.
Exactly. So why would you go away from your game plan?
It's almost like when they came in, the running backs, they just made things more complicated.
Well, here's the thing. The Eagles had 115 rushing yards as a team. 70 of those were Jalen Hurts.
That's a large chunk of those yards going to one guy.
Gainwell averaged 3 yards a carry. His longest carry is 9 yards. Sanders, 2.3 yards per carry. Longest rush, 6 yards. Boston Scott, 3 carries, 8 yards, 2.7 average. None of those are good enough with that offensive line.
No.
And I think it's fair to ask, are any of these guys probably coming back next year? I mean, Miles Sanders is probably going to be let go. I wouldn't be surprised the Eagles draft a running back because clearly they lacked explosiveness at that position this year.
Also,
I think it's fair to ask, did the Eagles O-line get carried by did the running backs get
carried by the O-line?
Yeah, by the O-line all year.
I mean, maybe. I don't think that's fully true. I think that's kind of true. I think a lot of it is the running backs when they get out in space. I mean, that's them making the moves themselves, but between the tackles, I mean, that's probably a lot of the O-line, but it's also the running back being able to see the hole. And I guess credit to the Chiefs front last night for, I don't know, putting a lot of pressure on the running backs. Because I felt like a lot of the run plays that were designed, it was a lot of going out to the outside and kind of doing these sweep motions. And it wasn't really a lot of north and south design plays, a lot of east-west. And I don't know. I don't think Gainwell is really designed for an east-west play. Sanders can be, but I don't know. Whenever they came into the game, the running backs, they just weren't effective. It was just kind of shocking because all year you're talking about the Eagles and how they're this great running team, which they are. I mean, you go even back to last year, they were a really good rushing team last year. I don't know. It was just weird to see them struggle the way they did on the ground.
But let's go to the other side of the ball now, because this is where I thought it was even more of a mismatch. because the Eagles still put up 35 points with their quote unquote out of order offense that we're talking about over here.
Right. And the thing was, sorry, just before you get to your point, I was saying on Friday, you got to use Smith and Brown, and they did.
Yeah, no, you're
Smith
right.
and Brown each had 196 yards, so that wasn't the problem. Clearly, the two top flight wide receivers are doing their job. It's just a shame that the running backs didn't hold up their end of the job.
And that was ultimately the you live by the run, you guys died by the run. I mean, really, like I feel like Eagle football this year, when it's been at its best, is just running the ball down people's throats. Like the Giants game, when your offense was just scoring at will. I mean, everything came off the run, the RPOs. That's just the way it flows. And absolutely, I agree with you, Jeff. There's going to have to be some serious conversations about, hey, if this offensive line is intact next year and Kelsey and Lane return, which I hope for your sake that they do, but I think it's expected that they'll return. But if they don't, that's a possibility. But we're hoping they do for your sake. But a new running back would absolutely, I think, flourish the offense.
Yeah, I think too.
You have to be thinking that right now.
Yeah.
After watching that performance.
Well, and the other thing too is we've seen a lot of teams pay running backs, and those deals haven't really worked out. So I'm not sure if the Eagles would be willing to pay
Cowboys,
Sanders.
Titans, all pay running backs. Well, we have actually, the Giants just took a running back second overall, which is just kind of silly. The Cowboys did the worst thing, which is take one in the top, not win anything, and then also still pay. And if you looked, it kind of hurt their team this year.
Right. And then you look at the Panthers with McCaffrey. They gave him a big deal, and now he's not even on the team. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's another one as well. But let's go to this other side of the ball here, because I want to talk about Mahomes and kind of the effect that he had on your defense here, but really just in the playoffs. Like, we need to talk about how crazy he was this season. So in the postseason, he threw 100 passes. He was 72 for 100. That's 72% in completion. That's already insane. He threw for 700 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, not a single turnover. And he was all on that hurt ankle. I mean, if you're not going to be able to beat this guy now, I mean, it's going to be a long, long couple of years for the league. That's the first thing that I want to say.
I mean,
do you disagree with that?
No, I don't. Like you said earlier, he's not going away. The Chiefs are not going away. I mean, they're going to be here for a long time.
Yeah, so that's the first.
They're here to stay.
We'll talk about the Mahomes effect there. The guy's a special player. But God, Andy Reid just ran circles around Jonathan Gannon. It felt like whatever the Chiefs drew up, specifically in the red zone too. I felt like whatever they drew up in the red zone just worked with absolute ease.
Yeah, that was another key too. I think Kansas City was 3 for 3 in the red zone. I think the Eagles were 2 for 4. Even that slight difference is huge, because if you go down there and you get 7 as opposed to 3 or even 0, if depending on if you go for it on 4th down, I mean, those 4 points, those little 4-point swings can be huge. And you saw the final score was 38-35. So they were able to capitalize on their end zone trips, the Chiefs.
Yeah, but at the same time too, it's just like you're disappointed as an Eagles fan because you're not looking at it at Chiefs success. You're looking at it as the Eagles failure, because statistically, as great as this Chiefs offense was, this was also supposed to be the best defense, one of the best defenses, specifically the front in the NFL. And honestly, Jeff, no sacks looks really bad.
Yeah. Especially when you're coming off a game. And I know the 49ers didn't really have a QB, but
yeah, that's got to be talked about. The Eagles path.
When you have a pass rush like the Eagles do, especially when they can just rotate guys every single play and they are pretty much fresh for every down, to have not any sacks is very, very disappointing.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely.
Especially for guys like Hassan Reddick and Brandon Graham, who've had really good years or really good seasons, especially in the sack department.
I want to pose this to you, like this question. Do you think playing Daniel Jones, blowing them out, the Giants, obviously that game was a cakewalk. And then the next game you played a team that had pretty much no quarterback for 3/4 of the game. Those obviously were not the most challenging playoff games. You didn't really have to play your best for those. Do you think those two, I don't want to say easy games, but not challenging games are the reason for this second half collapse? Because it just seemed like the Eagles had so many areas where they could have been better. And realistically, like I'm saying, they haven't had a tough game since December. We're in the middle of February. They haven't really
Right.
played that tough of a game.
I think
since-
part of you is true. I think that is true that they haven't really faced a challenging O-line besides maybe the 49ers.
O-line. It's just a challenge in general. I'm talking about their defense, really, because I thought their defense was really where they got crushed. Like, since that Cowboys game, did they really have us any like super, super hard challenge? I mean, they had Davis Webb.
No, but a part of that too is they can't really control that.
They can't, but at the same time,
It's not like they can pick who they play and they're thinking, oh, let's play this team. So if we beat them, it looks good. I mean, they can't do that, obviously.
it's just that the Eagles, I felt like were really never really, really the only game I felt like they were ever really truly challenged all year was that Cowboy game on Christmas Eve.
Which is funny because they almost won that game with the backup quarterback.
Yes. And their offense played phenomenal that day. Everybody else stepped up, and it was great. But their defense obviously got cooked that day. And I don't know. I just saw a lot of similarities from defensively that game to defensively the Super Bowl. Like it just was a lot of, those big plays. It was the tight end just being open all the time. It was, just quarterbacks making nice throws.
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't know, the defense can play so well and they have all this confidence and they think they can just carry it into another game, which is obviously right to think. But yeah, when you run into Mahomes, it's a different animal.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many things.
I think the other thing too is Mahomes loves to dance around in the pocket. I mean, he could easily pick up a 5-yard run. Instead, he'll just try to, I don't know, wait an extra second or two and get Kelsey or Smith-Schuster or Tony open, and then he'll hit one of them. It's almost like, I don't know, he's willing to wait the extra second.
Yeah, no, he is without a doubt.
These other QBs are making quicker
the
decisions.
most challenging quarterback out there.
It could be true, though, that they haven't really faced a challenge since that Cowboys game, besides last night. I mean, that could have some truth to it.
I don't know. It's just that we know the Chiefs were battle tested because look at who they played. Tough game against the Jaguars. That was a dogfight, which they weren't really expecting, but the Jaguars hung in there.
They did.
And then the second game against the Bengals. I mean, you could argue the Chiefs all season were probably more prepared for a playoff run than the Eagles were because the Eagles didn't have that tough of a schedule, right? Like those NFC East teams, you didn't see Dak the first time. You guys played the AFC South, all the NFC East teams. That division wasn't that great. Obviously, the Jaguars made it to the second round, but I don't know. I'm kind of thinking that maybe the Eagles were never pushed all the way to their potential, and I just feel like that second half collapse, like it kind of had something to do with them never having to play that hard in the second half. Because remember how we've talked about they play great in the second quarter, that's where they get these leads, and then they kind of fall off in the second half. And that was something we talked about earlier in the season. And that's kind of what happened last night.
Yeah, but I'll go back to it. I mean, we can't really control the schedule. I mean, I know they're playing teams like the Texans and the Jags and the Colts and the Titans, who are all not great teams. I know some of them are around 500, but I don't know. Then you're playing teams. I'm trying to think who they
But the
play.
schedule isn't my point. I'm just listing off those games.
Right, but I think
The point is they don't play
yeah.
hard in the second half. And
That's
Sure.
true. I mean, that's 100% true. See, I don't think that was really true during so they lost the game to Washington that when they were 8-1. I don't think that was really true. And I don't know, some of the games in the second half of the year when they played Green Bay and Indianapolis, I think the second half
what's the Green Bay?
Right, but I think the offense was a little stronger in the second half of the year in the second half.
Yeah, that's for sure true.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there's not anything that they can do about it now. I think I'll say this: if a couple different plays went a different direction, I think the Eagles would absolutely be Super Bowl champs. Specifically, the Jalen Hurts fumble and specifically that Tony punt return. Those two plays don't happen. I think without a doubt, we're sitting here and obviously
Right.
cold at the end too.
Right. I mean, all of that adds up to 17 points.
that was a huge difference.
Yeah.
Those were momentum changing plays. And I don't know. It's just brutal. It is just brutal. That hurts his fumble is really, I think, as great as he played, just giving the Chiefs a free 7 points when their offense isn't on the field is like the biggest no ever. Well, and it's not 7 points, but it may as well be.
It's 7 points.
When you turn
Yeah.
it off and turn it over in your own area of the field, yeah, it may as well be 7 points against that offense because it was.
Yeah, and then they got extra rests, and then they came out and did their thing.
Yeah. Anything else to add?
I don't know. I think we covered it all. Actually, this is not even related to the game, but did you like the halftime show last night?
It was okay. I mean, I didn't think Rihanna did a splendid job of performing. I think she was just okay, but it appeared like she was pregnant.
Yeah, so they confirmed that
Oh.
after the halftime show. So
Yeah, I
she
was
is expected to have a second
really
child.
surprised because I thought she just had a kid, so I didn't realize she was pregnant again. But also credit to her for performing while pregnant because that's obviously tough. But also she hasn't performed in, I think somebody said 7 years,
Yeah, someone said that,
and
and I was
that's a lot.
surprised.
That's
That's
a
a long
long
time.
time. So, and she doesn't really have any new songs that came out like really new. So she's not like promoting anything. So this was a little bit maybe outside the box, but I don't know. I don't think she was great. There were some times where she looked a little bored up there, but she's a good singer, so it was good to listen to those songs. But I didn't think the performance was anything special. I thought it was just okay. And also, too, for Rihanna, she's a big name. So I think there was big expectations, and I think it's safe to say she did not meet those expectations in my mind.
Yeah, I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was terrible. I thought it was kind of a decent performance. Like you said, she's a great singer. She has great music. You could rip off so many Rihanna songs just off the top of your head. The performance was okay. I will say the dancers were pretty entertaining, but I don't know. I thought it was a solid performance. And then how about the commercials? You see any commercials that you liked? Was there one that maybe stood out from others? I have to do more digging because sometimes I forget who actually had commercials because there's so many. We just get bombarded with so many
The
commercials.
commercials, the one that annoyed me the most was the Tubi one, where it started being like it was changing the app on the smart TVs, and I got really nervous.
That fooled me a little
That
bit
fooled me
because
too,
you
because
saw
I wasn't paying
Burkhart and
attention.
Olsen come up, and then all of a sudden you see this menu come up at the bottom of the screen.
I didn't like that. I thought something was happening to the game, and I was like a little scared, but it was just a silly commercial. But no, I didn't think anything really stood out this year. Honestly, I thought the commercials were a little just lackluster this year.
Yeah,
Nothing stood
there
out.
wasn't really one that
This year
stuck.
was way better, way more like in your face, catching your attention. I don't know. This year I did not think they were good. Not one stood out to me. Not a single one.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There was one that was pretty good, but I don't really remember who it was. So maybe that's just me, or maybe that's the company.
The only one that I thought was even remotely funny was the E-Trade baby one.
Yeah,
Besides that, I don't think I remember a single one or anything stood out. That's it. That's the one that just came to my head right now, and I maybe laughed for like 2 seconds. I was like, huh, there's babies talking. That's it. It wasn't like anything great, and they've done that so many times, E-Trade, so it's not like it's something new. But I don't know. I mean, it's safe to say that the Super Bowl commercials just don't hit the same as they used to.
I think they're kind of losing their
their oomph, right?
style. I
Yeah.
don't know what the word is.
They're losing their specialty.
Mhm.
It's not as special anymore.
Yeah, they'll have to do something with that.
Yeah, they'll have to do something with that for sure. Hopefully it'll be a little bit better next year. But well, that's the end of the NFL season, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty much it now. And we look till next year. We got the draft coming up in April. The Bears will be picking first.
We'll see what they do
Yeah,
there.
we'll see what they do there. I would think they probably trade back. So whoever trades up is probably going to be taking a quarterback because I assume that the top 2 picks will be quarterbacks, just because there's a lot of teams that kind of need one right now. The Colts need one, the Panthers need one. You could make the case the Bucks need one because they have only Kyle Trask under contract.
You can make an argument
Texans
for
need
every NFC South team to make a QB
Oh yeah,
change.
oh yeah. Every NFC South could really need a quarterback. That's
In
absolutely true.
theory.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. A lot of other interesting storylines too, with some coaching changes. We also have to see who the Cardinals hire because they're the only team who has not hired a head coach yet. Although there's a chance it could be Lou Anarumo from the Bengals. He's their D coordinator.
Interesting.
But it was between him and Gannon and Mike Kafka from the Giants. So I think it's going to be Anarumo. That's kind of like the belief right now. Like he's kind of got a little bit of an upper hand, but especially after Gannon's performance yesterday, not great.
No, I think Eagles fans would want him to take that job.
Yeah, I think so too. He did not call a great game. The defense kind of did not live up to the expectations. And I think that's ultimately going to be the story there is defensive disappointment from the Eagles and also big plays that change the game for the Eagles.
I think the other thing too, I forgot to bring this up earlier, talking about Gannon. All of the Chiefs touchdowns, I feel like were wide open touchdowns. And
Yeah,
I know they were all close,
They were all
besides
wide
maybe the Kelsey one. But I don't know. I felt like the receiver would be nowhere near any Eagle defender.
And it was because Andy Reid was just completely manipulating what Gannon was doing. He just outcoached him.
Mhm.
That's experience, I guess. That's it. Andy Reid did call a good game last night, particularly in the second half, particularly in the red zone. I mean, they were dynamite in the red zone. And really, too, they missed that kick. When they missed that kick, I thought it was going to set them back so far. The Chiefs. They missed that 42-yard field goal. I mean, when that happened, I'm thinking for the Eagles, okay, you need to go down there. You need to get a touchdown. And if you can stop them again and somehow find a touchdown again and get a 2-score lead, I mean, that would be amazing. But that requires 2 scores from your offense and 1 stop.
I could be wrong, but did the Hurts fumble happen on the next possession after the missed field goal? Yeah, see, that's huge. You go from basically getting 3 points, the Chiefs, to maybe giving up points on your next possession, and then you get them back. I mean, for the Eagles side, that's a killer.
Brutal. Just so many brutal plays that just absolutely killed.
Especially because I think that was Kansas City's second possession of the game where they had the missed field goal. Because if you're the Eagles D, you give up the touchdown on the first possession, then you get lucky. Bucker misses the kick. You're thinking, oh, maybe there's a little opening here for the offense. And then it all goes away. So, yeah, it's tough.
It is tough, but what do you think about this season? Any closing thoughts before we have about a minute?
Yeah,
Break.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like every season's full of drama. I think I was shocked that the Bills weren't even in the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship. I feel like just because they were the preseason favorites, I was very disappointed with them. They've got to be one of the most disappointing teams. They're probably the most disappointing good team. I don't know. I think for Mahomes, it shows that, I don't know, he can do so much with not just less, because he still has Kelsey and some other guys, but when you take someone away like Tyreek Hill, he can still find a way to be very successful. And then, I don't know. I think people are trying to figure out, I don't know, the Eagles kind of came out of nowhere. So I wonder who that team is going to be next year. Not the Eagles, but who's going to be that surprise team that kind of just bursts on the scene.
Yeah.
Maybe like a 500-ish team that just all of a sudden wins 13, 14 games.
I think there's a lot of teams that could turn it around next year. I think there's also a lot of teams who are in the playoffs this year that won't be next year.
Right.
Listen, like, a team like the Giants, they're going to have to spend a lot of money, especially on their backfield, because they obviously got to keep Jones. They're going to be putting money towards Saquon Barkley. I assume they're keeping him, but we'll see what happens. Maybe they can make a big jump next year.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams in there, but we'll figure it out in the offseason. So we'll go to a quick break here. On the other side, we'll talk some Loyola sports, specifically some lacrosse action from over the weekend. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. Welcome back to WLOY, Loyola Radio, streaming online at WLOY.org and Campus TV channel 111.1. You're listening to After the Whistle with Jeffrey Bossi and Jimmy Cody. And we were talking some Super Bowl before the break, and sad to see the NFL season go, but you got to move on. And that's exactly what we're going to do. And we're going to talk some college lacrosse here on the show. And we had the season start last weekend, but this past Saturday, we had some crazy upsets in the college lacrosse where we had Jacksonville beat Duke 13-12 for the second year in a row. So congrats to the Jacksonville Dolphins for that upset. We had the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays pull off a major upset. They took down the Georgetown Hoyas right here in Baltimore to improve to 2-0. And then we had a really big upset here in Baltimore as well on Charles Street, and it was our Loyola Greyhounds. They took down the Maryland Terrapins by a shocking score of 12-7. Maryland was the defending national champions. They actually, before Saturday, had not lost a game since May of 2021 when they lost to Virginia in the national championship game. So it was a long time coming for them, but the Hounds took them down 12-7, excuse me. So, Jimmy, we were both there. I'm just going to throw it to you. What did you see from the Hounds on Saturday? How did we pull off this upset?
Well, we came out and we were not shy, particularly on offense. We were not afraid to just get right in there and fire up shots. And frankly, our shots were going in. Maryland had way more shots than we did, way more shots on goal than we did, but we were just more accurate and we made some nice shots. And on offense, we were able to get the job done with 12 goals. But I would be remiss if I did not mention the Greyhounds defense on Sunday. I mean, it was electric. The goalie play on Saturday was awesome and deservedly so. Our goalie, whose name is Luke Stout, Staudt. I hope I'm saying that right. But he was Patriot League goalkeeper of the week for his performance. 19 saves he had. And there were some close shots, very close shots. A lot of those shots could have went in. He made some phenomenal saves. And ultimately, I mean, our defense combined with our offense's accurate shooting is the reason we won.
100%. And to go off of Luke Stout, he was amazing, like you said. And a lot of the times, I feel like he had to use his legs to make saves. A lot of the shots that Maryland was throwing at the net were bouncing shots or just slow shots. And he had to make some kick saves and put his stick on the ground. He did a really good job of just seeing the ball. And I think credit to the defense too, because they were forcing Maryland to shoot from the outside. And it's funny because I thought Maryland did a good job of forcing Loyola to shoot from the outside. I think the only difference was our shots were going in.
Yeah, they were going.
You saw Adam Poitras and Evan James have a lot of nice goals. And I think the other thing too was you kept saying this, whenever we would give up a goal, there would be a lot of pressure on us to score next. And we did. Yeah, we answered.
We responded every single time. And it wasn't just that we responded. How about that one sequence where it felt like for 3-4 minutes, I mean, we just broke that game open. Because I was nervous to you, because I was in the second half. I literally said, sitting next to you, I'm like, we cannot give up this lead. Because if we give up this lead, then this game's over. Like they're gonna just, it's gonna take all our momentum away, and we cannot have that. And from that point on, I mean, it was just an offensive eruption combined with some breathtaking saves, and everything was just going right for the Greyhounds.
Yeah, I remember you saying that we had to respond every time Maryland scored because we opened the game scoring first with the 1-0 lead, and I believe we were up 3-1, and Maryland tied at 3-3. And then I believe at halftime, the Hounds were up 5-4. And then I think there was one point where the game was 6-5, and Maryland, I think, scored to make it 6-5. And then we scored to make it 7-5. And then you said that avalanche, that absolute eruption. I think it was the beginning of the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. I think that's when it happened.
Yeah,
when we ripped off, I think 4 or 5 in a row. I mean,
dagger.
Jesus.
I mean, that literally just punched a hole in the soul of the Maryland Terrapins lacrosse team because they had nothing after that. There was no energy on that sideline during the second half of the fourth quarter. And you know what, too? I felt like we were able to overcome a lot of circumstances that were kind of like stacked against us. Like, number one, we're going up against a great team. Number two, we also did not win very many faceoffs, and we were statistically outdueled in the ground ball category as well.
Well, so we were talking about this on the ride back after the game, and you kept looking at the scoreboard and seeing how much we were getting crushed in both of those departments, and we did the math. Maryland had a combined 80 faceoffs won and ground balls won, and Loyola had a combined 53 ground balls won and faceoffs won. And at one point, I think Maryland actually won the first 7 faceoffs of the game, and then Loyola won a few here and there, but Maryland crushed Loyola in that department. And then every ground ball, it seemed like Maryland would get it.
Yeah, but because our defense had played so well, and because our goalie was playing his tail off and blocking whatever was sent his way, it allowed us to stay in the game. You know what it was too? It's like I'm mentioning them as if it was the only one, but I want to be clear. Like, that was a total team effort. Like, the offense never stopped. The defense never gave in. The goalie never stopped. I mean, it was just everybody. Like, then we started winning those faceoffs, and we were able to get more points because of it. You know what I mean? Like, just the whole team, it was almost like, like rowing a boat. Like, it just started to kind of like work perfectly in unison. and we were just going up the stream, and it looked absolutely beautiful. I mean, that was the most fun that I've had at a sporting event in a very long time. That was electric on Saturday. Ridley was rocking for the boys as they were
Yeah.
upsetting Maryland.
Yeah, it's funny that it was rocking because I think it's gonna be even more rocking on Saturday when we
Yes.
take on our arch rival, Johns Hopkins,
Oh yeah,
the Battle of
absolutely.
Charles Street. But the other thing I was gonna bring up about the defense too, and this might sound kind of wrong just because Maryland had so many shots on goal. I just felt like Loyola's defense would force Maryland to shoot, I don't know, kind of late in the shot clock, and then they would get the ball back just because that's how lacrosse works. If you shoot the ball, you have someone closest to the end line, you get the ball back. That's how it works. That's just the rule. I feel like sometimes Loyola would force Maryland to kind of just pass it around for a while, and then that would just chew up clock on the shot clock, and then they get the ball back with 20 or 15 to shoot. And I don't know, sometimes that's tough in lacrosse. You need to go behind the goal, and then if you just clog the middle, you shoot them from the outside. I don't know. I
Yeah,
just thought the defense was really active. I feel like they were
absolutely.
grinding.
I thought the scheme was perfect. And we definitely did not let Maryland get any easy shots. We forced them to work for whatever looks they really could find. And then when they did get looks, our goalie made the save. We had guys make plays. I thought we were really aggressive on defense, especially. It was like, even when you thought Maryland was going to really kind of start to get it together, because they had some really close shots, and I was really just waiting for them to start to find the net, especially because we had been fairly lucky, I thought, with our shooting. We were just shooting at such a great rate, but it didn't even matter because it just never stopped. Our
No,
team
we
just
just
played a
kept it
complete
going.
game from beginning to end.
Yeah, I was very impressed too because in this type of game, you're playing Maryland, who's number one and number two in the polls. They're the defending champions. They're so loaded at every possession. I don't know. Coming into the game, you might think that Loyola could win, but you're probably thinking, oh, as a casual fan, let's just keep it close, and maybe some things can go our way and we can build off of stuff. But to win outright, just to win against a team like that, I mean, that just says a lot about Loyola, especially since they played Maryland last year when they went down to College Park and we lost 20-8 or 22-8. It was one of those scores. I just don't remember off the top of my head, but
It was not a good game.
no, it was rough. We got down, I don't even know, 3-0, 4-0. We couldn't really come back, but yeah, just a complete role reversal to this year. So yeah, as a result, I don't know if you saw the polls, Jimmy, but Loyola has risen number 11 in the inside lacrosse poll. So from going unranked to number 11, that's a huge jump. And definitely the pressure and the expectations will go up, especially coming to this game on Saturday against Johns Hopkins, who, and they're right, they're number 6. So it's going to be a tough test, especially last year with Hopkins beating Loyola in that tough game in February of last year. So Hopkins does have a game tomorrow against UNC. So we'll be intrigued to see how they play there. And then women's team, they play their first game of the season on Saturday when they host Johns Hopkins as well. It's a doubleheader at Ridley. So place will be rocking for pretty much the whole day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a great day of lacrosse, and hopefully the Hounds put on another great performance against one of our arch rivals. Obviously, we had that tough loss last year against Johns Hopkins. Still a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth just because I thought that was a game we should have had, and I know our team certainly thinks that as well. So, hopefully a good performance this week, especially after the nice win. Our confidence should be, riding high, and if we keep playing with the same passion and energy we did before, listen, we're gonna have good things happen to us because that was awesome on Saturday.
Right. And then one last thing I'll add is last year the Greyhounds started 0-4. And this year to start 1-0, just to get that monkey off your back, I think that's huge for the confidence. And I think getting that first win's really, really tough. I think that's one of the most underrated things in sports is getting that first win, especially in a sport where you don't have too many games. I think in football is another comparison. You only have 17 games. And sometimes it's hard to get that first win. I mean, you see these teams start 0-3 and 0-4 some years. And I don't know, once they start winning, it's kind of too little too late. So I think getting that first win's huge, especially against a team like Maryland. So yeah, good vibes around the Hounds right now. But you want to shift it to the basketball court?
Yeah, let's shift it to the other side of Loyola sports. We have a lot of basketball to talk about in both the men's and the women's. Let's start with the men, shall we? So since the last time we've talked, they have played 2 games. They played a game last Wednesday against the Army Black Knights up in West Point. And unfortunately, we lost by 6. It was a 6-point loss to the Army Black Knights. We lost 76-70. Jalen Andrews had 17. but unfortunately was not enough for us. And, just another game that we're close, but we're not able to win.
Yeah, and it's really a game that we should have won. We were up throughout the majority of the game. I'm not sure you caught the game,
We had a second
Jimmy,
half
but
lead with
yeah,
10 minutes left.
we were looking pretty good. I thought the offense was good, ball movement was good. I felt like they were really connected, but there were 2-and-1s that Army made down the stretch, and that's 6 points right there. And we didn't really recover from that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and so that blowing a lead in the second half, again, we just go through these streaks where we just aren't good enough on offense, and it feels like we give the game away.
Yeah, and I know
feel
some
like
of
we
these
sound like a
guys.
broken record here, but that's the truth.
Yeah, I know some of the guys have been around for a while. It's just maybe, I don't know, you get a little tight when you have the lead, especially for a team like Loyola, where, I mean, I'm not saying they're going to be leading at the end of a lot of games, but I don't know. This year it's been kind of a struggle. So I don't know. Sometimes they get a little tight and you try to make a play where it's just you try to make this hero ball play and kind of forget that you have 4 other guys you can go to and rely on.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we talked about how their offense was a little lackluster on Wednesday, but on Saturday it showed up amazingly in a road game.
It's like someone turned on a light switch.
Yeah, but we've seen that so many times, Jeff. Like we've seen times where the offense is just not missing, and then we see times where it doesn't even look like we can run a 3-man weave. I mean, it's a disaster sometimes out there. And if I can just see the good basketball more consistently, I think we would have a great team because I do think that we have talent. We just need to put it together, and maybe one day that will happen, and I sure hope so. But I'll tell you one bright spot for sure, and that's Dion Perry. On Saturday, he was awesome. He had 28 points, and listen, there's not much else to say. 28 points from a freshman, that's pretty good.
Yeah, he's been lighting it up recently. He has that ability. If he just sees 1 or 2 shots going, he can really turn it into 4, 5, or 6 shots. He really can get going. He's a very streaky shooter.
And it's not just him, but the whole team I thought played pretty good because if you look at it, we shot almost 60% for 3.
Yeah, shots were falling
Yeah.
everywhere. I mean, you look at Alonzo, he had a good game. He had 16 and 10. I'm not saying he's a 3-point shooter, but getting those extra contributions are massive.
Yeah, 16 and 10. That's awesome. We also had Golden, who did really good on the boards. He had 10, and he also had 6 points to contribute. But it wasn't just Dion who was doing the scoring. It was also Jalen Andrews, who shot 6 of 10 from the field and had himself 19 points.
Yeah, and perfect 7 of 7 from the line. And you talk about free throws being so crucial to this team's success. So
oh yeah, absolutely.
Stepping up to the strike and knocking them down was huge. Dion Perry also went 6 for 6 from the line. And then can't forget about Chris Kuzemka. He made 3 threes and he only took 3. So I mean that's a perfect percentage there.
Yeah.
He's been kind of like a nice little spark plug off the bench this year. He's kind of found himself.
Absolutely. And 3-point difference or 3-point shooting in general was the biggest difference because we shot 10 of 17. Lehigh shot 6 of 19. That comes to 58% for us. Oh, over 58%. That comes to around 31% for them. So brutal difference there. And then you combine free throws. That's a huge difference.
And then the funny thing is we were down 6 at the half and we had to come back and win. But the thing is that I'm most impressed with was once we got the lead, I felt like we just held off Lehigh. Whenever they would score, we'd score right back. I just felt like our offense did a really good job of responding and staying resilient.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Especially on the road.
And you know what else too? We dominated on the offensive boards. 11 rebounds on offense. You know how many Lehigh had? 2. 9 extra possessions we bought for ourselves just by rebounding. And then we had more defensive rebounds too. So listen, if you dominate on the boards like we can, and we showed that we can, that's going to make our lives a lot easier. That's something that I feel like we have an advantage that we don't really manipulate, but we're starting to show that a little bit more. I've liked the rebounding recently.
Yeah, if you put in Golden DK or Lonzo Fowre in there, I mean, those are 2 really tall centers that are probably going to get a lot of boards. And then even when you have to go to the bench, you put in Velko, she's pretty big. He can get a lot of boards too. So yeah, cleaning up the glass is so undervalued, I think, in basketball sometimes. So if you're creating extra possessions for your offense, that's huge.
Yeah, and honestly, the thing is too, Lehigh had like a lead in this game.
Right.
And
they came out pretty good.
At one point, I'm trying to find it. I'm pretty sure they were up. Yeah, their largest lead of the game was 13.
Yeah, so we had to come back and really earn this.
We had to battle for this win, but it was by doing the little things right, making free throws, taking good shots, hitting our threes, finding good looks, rebounding really well, particularly on the offensive end. You know, it's the little things that make a big difference. You got to do a lot of the little things really well.
Yeah, and coming up here, they only have 4 games left, the men's team, but 3 of the 4 are at home, so they can gain a little momentum going into the Patriot League tournament. I mean, who knows? They get a good matchup. We'll see.
Yeah, we also wanted to quickly mention the women's team. They had a game on Saturday. They played against Lehigh, and Talia Dixon got her 1,000th point.
Very big deal. Congratulations
So
to Talia.
Unfortunately, it was an 8-point loss for the Hounds to Lehigh here on the Evergreen campus. But they have another game later on, and that's Wednesday against Lafayette on the road. So hopefully we can get a win there. And it's a team with similar record, we can say that, because they are 8-15, we're 7-17. So we definitely have our work cut out for us. However, the only difference is they're 5-8 in the Patriot League, so it's going to be a tough game, like all conference games are.
Right. And I think the key for the women, at least in the games that I've seen, I think they need to get off to fast starts. I feel like they dig themselves in big holes early and then they start to climb out of them a little bit. But by the time the game goes on, it's just too little too late. I think coming out in the first and second quarters are huge for them. I think if you give Lex the ball down low, I mean, that could open up everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Lex is a great player down low. We got to look to work the ball.
And we have some shooting on the outside. So, I mean, if she can draw double teams,
yeah, a little inside out game
can free up 3-point shooting.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you want. And the last time we played against Lafayette, it was a really low scoring game. We won or we lost 39-35. Listen, if you only give up 39 points, you really hope that's a game you can win. So really tough that we were only able to put up 35, but hopefully we keep up the defensive intensity this go around and we can put the ball in the basket a little bit more and get us a Greyhound W.
Yeah, so good luck to the men's and women's basketball teams and men's and women's lacrosse teams in their games coming up. So is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off here, Jimmy?
No, I don't think so. I think we hit it on the spot it needed to be.
Yeah, I think we did too. So thank you as always for listening. We will be back on Friday, probably talking more lacrosse as those games will be the next day. So stay with us. We'll be back on Friday. Thank you as always for listening, and we will see you then.